In this third and final installment on the Building a Listing website with JetEngine and Elementor Pro, we're going to add the finishing touches to our listing by adding in some nifty functionality. First off, we'll be adding the ability to add our preferred recipes to a custom favorites section. You can kind of think of this in the same way that you'd add items to a wish list or to a compare products option. In fact, the skills you learn can easily be used to build those features to any website. Now in the second part, I'll show you how to easily add a rating and feedback system to your listing website. Again, the skills you learn here could be used on many different kinds of websites and should give you a solid understanding of how to integrate them into any future projects. Now finally, I've also added full timestamps below and links to the first and second installments of this mini-series, so be sure to check them out first if you haven't already watched them. They have a ton of incredibly valuable content included. Okay, so as always, let's start by taking a look at the final result of today's tutorial. Okay, so let's start off by taking a look at what we are going to be creating. So this is our page that we've created over the last two videos, and you can see if we scroll down, we've got some new sections, we've got a rating, and we've got a favorited recipe, which allows us to easily add these recipes to our favorites. Once we add the recipe to our favorites, we can then access that. You can see it changes now to added. If you want to add reviews, we can do that too. So we open this up, for example, let's take a look at this sweet and fruity toast, scroll down, and you can see we can write a review. So we can click on write a review. We just type in our review. This is awesome. And we'll just title it tasty food. And we'll give it a 5. Actually, let's give it a 4 out of 5 stars. Submit a review, and you can see there's our review. Now, obviously, we need to have some kind of security in place. So this is because I'm logged in as an admin. I automatically get that added in. However, you can set it up so you have to have approval for any of these reviews that you add in. We also have a new section on our site to show all of our favorited recipes. You can see this is one of the recipes I've favorited, and as you can see, we have an option to remove from favorites, which will remove it from this section. So that's what we're going to add in today. Two completely new sections, the review section, and also the ability to add it to your favorites. Now we've seen what we'll be adding to our listing site, let's kick things off by setting up our data stores for our new favorites feature. So the first thing we need to do when we start working with any of these favorites is to add in the option to be able to work with them. To do that, we simply come into the dashboard, into JetEngine, and we're going to go into the JetEngine option itself. Inside there, we can see all the different modules we have available to us. And what we want to do is we want to find the option that allows us to choose data stores. So all you need to do is enable that. Hit save, give it a second or two, let that reactivate, and you should find then we have the new option available. And you can see there's our data stores option. If we open data stores up, you can see we have a really simple setup. First thing we need to do is just tell it what is exactly are we going to create? What are we going to use for our data stores? And there's lots of use cases, things like wish lists, favorites, those kinds of cool things. Even comparisons can be done using this setup. So what we're going to do first of all is create the new store. Let's just choose the option, and now we've got some basic options to go through. So the first thing we want to do is give this a name. So we're going to call this favorites. You can see the slug will automatically generate it exactly the same as you would expect with anything to do with JetEngine. And then we can choose the store type, and we have 4 different options currently. We can use cookies, sessions, user metadata, or local storage. Now for this example, we're going to use the cookies because that's what most of us are used to. But I'd recommend taking a look at the documentation to see how the sessions, user metadata, and the local storage all work, because you may find they're better options for various different reasons. Okay, so with that enabled, the next thing we can do is we can set the maximum items allowed to store. Now, it's up to you. You can set this at 0 and let it to be unlimited if you want to, or you could set it to a value. We're going to set it to 10, which basically means we can only have 10 favorites stored at any one time, but you can, if you want to, set this to whatever value. Count items, we're going to choose that option because that can be useful. You can use that metadata inside your custom templates that you create or your favorite section, and you can use that count value. Just quite useful. You've then got other things like is user store, and you've got store items on view. Well, we're going to leave those as they are for now, and we're going to set this up to be our first store. So with our new data store set up, we're ready to start setting all the rest of this up to start working. So the first thing we need to do is just create the page that's going to be our favorites page. We'll come back a little later and put what we need inside there, but just for the next step after this, we need that page to exist. So we're just going to come into pages and we're going to add a new page, and we're just going to call this favorites. That's it. That's all we're going to do for now. We're going to hit publish on there. And then what we're going to do is we're going to copy this link. So I'm just going to right click and say copy link address so we know exactly what link it is we're working with. Okay, so with that done, we're going to hop over into JetEngine. We're going to come into our listings, and this is where we're going to edit the listing that currently displays just our individual recipe. If you're not sure what I'm talking about, if we take a look at the homepage, this item is a listing, this next item is a listing, and we created these templates in the previous video tutorials. So what we're going to do is we're going to find that particular template. So we've got the recipe listing. We're going to edit this with Elementor. Once we do that, we can then start adding the features that we want in. Now at the moment, this is just displaying the entire layout. And what I'm going to do quickly is I just want to change this so it looks a little bit more in keeping with what it's going to look like on the page. To do that, we can just hop into the settings option, into the listing settings, and I'm going to set the width of this to 450 pixels wide. That just makes the design aspect of this just a little bit easier because we can see exactly what we add to this particular listing, what it's going to look like. Okay, so with that done, the next thing we need to do is go and search for our dynamic listings option. So we're going to do a search for dynamic, and we're going to choose the dynamic link. We're going to drag and drop that into our design. We're going to position that underneath the description and before the read more. Now, at the moment, because this is a dynamic link, it's going to pull in what it thinks is correct. And you can see the source is set to permalink by default. We don't want that. We want to change that to something different. So we need to change that from permalink. We're going to say add to store. Once we do that, we now get a range of different options. First of all, we just choose what store it is we want to add it to. Now, obviously, we've only got one at this point in time. If you had more, you just need to make sure you select the correct one. We'll just set this to work with our favorites, and we're going to say reload the listing grid on success. We're going to enable that option. So what that's going to do is that will reload the listing grid once we make a selection to add something to our favorites to make sure it displays the message to say this has been added. Now, speaking of that message, we need to add that in. To do that, we just need to change the added to store text. So this is basically what happens after you click that link to add something to your favorites store. So we're just going to say my fave, just so it makes a little bit of sense, but you can put whatever you want on there. The next thing we need is the added to store URL, and this is why we created that blank page that's going to be our favorites page first. If we didn't do that, we wouldn't have anything to put inside here, and it would just make a little bit of back and forth, just a little bit annoying. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click inside there, right click and choose paste, and there's the link that we want to work with. Now you could, if you wanted to, get rid of the domain. So if you were setting this up on a test site and you were using it somewhere else afterwards, you could remove that from there. So you just end up with the basic link for it. It doesn't matter then what domain you're using. But for ease, I'm just going to leave everything inside there. So just going to put all of that in there. Then we can, if we want to, add a added to store icon. So let's see if we can find something that's going to be quite cool. Let's just see if we can find a heart. That looks pretty good. We'll say we want that. We'll insert that into there. Then we've got some additional options. And the first thing we want to change now is the read more option, because that label makes absolutely no sense to us whatsoever. So we're going to change that, and we're just going to say add to favorites. And there we go. That now changes that to add to favorites, and we've got the basics all set up. Before we wrap this section up though, let's just choose the field icon as well, and we're going to set that to be a heart as well. And there we go. We'll insert that inside there. So now we've got things set up. We can, if we want to, now come in and just adjust the styling a little bit. So we can say we want to put a bit of a gap for the icon, and we're also going to add a little bit of space around this. So we're just going to put a margin left and right. So we'll say 15 pixels, I believe, is what I've set up inside here. I think that looks about right. That'll do. Okay, so we've basically added the first section in. So we're going to update this template, and we've created our first listing item where we can add this to our favorites. So now let's just update this template file, and let's just check to make sure that that add to favorites is now part of our listing. So we're going to hop back into our site. We're going to refresh this, and we should now see there's our add to favorites option. Now we set things up on our main listing, let's take a look at how we handle removing items from our favorites. So the easiest way about going about this is to just basically duplicate what we've already created. So we're still in the same template. We're going to select the entire section, right click and copy this. Then we're going to hop back out of here. So we're going to come back into our dashboard, go back into our JetEngine listings, and we're going to create a new listing. So we're going to just add new. Post is perfectly fine. We're going to change this from post to recipe. We're going to set the listing name to remove, and we're going to set Elementor to be the listing view. That's perfectly fine. So we'll say create our new listing item, and then we're going to just do exactly like we did before. Pop into the settings, set this to be 450 pixels wide. Make sure that post is listing source and set to post type of recipe. That's fine. We're going to right click and we're just going to paste that inside there. That's the basics of this done. So what we're going to do now is we're going to select this and we're going to make some changes to it. So first thing we need to do is change the source from add to store and set this to be remove from store. Favorites is perfectly fine. Remove post from current listing. We want to make sure that is checked. Then we've got the options then for what label do we want to use. Well, for this example, we're just going to say we want to use a really simple one. Change the label to remove from favorites. Scroll down until we get towards the bottom. I'm going to change the field icon now to something a bit more in keeping, and we're going to select that, and we're just going to do a search for something that's a bit more in keeping, and we'll do something like a delete. So let's just do a search for window, and there we go. We'll use this option, and we'll say insert that into there. Now you're not seeing anything at the moment, so don't worry about that. It's just because there's no object to actually show up inside here, but be sure this is actually going to function perfectly fine. If you need to make any changes, you can do that for styling and all those kinds of things, but we're going to leave this as it is, and we're going to simply hit the update option. And that's basically our remove from our favorites option all set up. Next on our checklist is to add the favorites recipes to our new favorites page and check everything is working correctly. So let's just take a look at doing that right now. Okay, so let's just now create our favorites page. Let's come in and edit this. We're going to edit it with Elementor. Once we've done that, we're just going to insert a listing that'll have our favorites inside there. So to do that, we're just going to simply do a search for listing, grab the listing grid option, drop that onto our page. Next thing we're going to do is choose the listing we want to work with. So let's just do a search inside there for favorites. See, remove from faves, select that option. And now that's going to show us all of the recipes, which obviously is not what we wanted to do. So we need to do a couple of things. First thing we need to make sure is that we've got this set up to only display what's included in our favorites. Let's jump into the post query option. And inside there, we're going to add a new item. Choose the type. We're going to set this to be the option for posts and authors. And then you can see we've got a ton of options inside there, all of which, except for one, we can ignore. We go right to the bottom, it says get posts from store. All we need to do now is choose the relevant store. So we're going to click on there and there's our favorites. We're going to choose that, and obviously there's nothing going to show up because we've got nothing added to our favorites yet. So let's just add something into here to make it a little bit more in keeping so people know exactly what's going on. So I'm just going to put a little sort of section at the top. Okay, so all I've done is just add in a title for this section. We'd have some real text inside here just telling people what's going on, and we're going to hide the page title as always. And we'll click on update. And finally, let's just make a bit of space for this. Let's just add 100 pixels top and bottom. There we go. We'll hit update on there, and that's now our favorite section completed. All we need to do is add this into our navigation so people can get to it easily. And we'll just come into menus, and we're going to add favorites, add that to our menu. And what we're going to do is just leave that in its place, actually, to be honest, save it there. And we'll just hop back over to our site. We'll refresh this now. And we'll see there's our favorites. If we jump in there, there's our page template. No data was found. Obviously, there's nothing there. But you could change that message to whatever you want to say. Add your favorite recipes here, etc. That kind of thing. So let's just test this out now. Make sure that everything works the way we'd expect it to. So let's just go ahead and add a couple of recipes. I like the look of the pizza, so I'm going to add that to my favorites. Let's have a little look right the way down. A 5-bean salad and pita bread. Sounds good to me. Let's add that one as well. So now we can just go and take a look at our favorites if you want to. So we can click inside there, and there's the two we've just added. The healthy vegan pizza and the 5-bean salad. Once I finish with those, I can just say, I'll remove that from my favorites, and it's gone. We do the same again, and you can see all done. Really easy to do, but incredibly powerful using the data stores as part of JetEngine. Now we've built our favorites feature, let's get the ball rolling on our rating and feedback setup. To start off with, let's install the JetReviews plugin and configure it while we're at it. So let's just install JetReviews. I'm inside the update and installation section in Crocoblock, and inside there I'm going to install JetReviews. Once that's done, we can just activate it, and then we can start setting everything up. Okay, so there's our JetReviews. We're just going to hit activate plugin, and we are golden. So once that's done, we've got a new entry now on the left hand side. We come into JetReviews and go into settings. We can configure this exactly as we need it to be working. So the first thing we need to do is set it up to actually work with our recipe custom post type. So we're going to ignore the posts and pages. We don't want to set anything up inside there for this particular example. And we're going to choose the recipe option. Once we do that, we've got two simple options, but they will open up once we actually enable this. So let's just switch this on. And with that enabled, we now have a ton more options. First and most important thing is the allowed roles. Who do you want to allow to actually be able to post reviews? So I would generally recommend that you don't let guests, in other words, anybody that's not logged in, to be able to use this function. But if you want to, you can enable the guest option. However, I'm going to leave this as everything bar guests, so someone has to have an account before they can do anything. Then we scroll down and we've got some options we can configure based upon what we want to do with any of these. So new review approval, allow comments. So you might want to allow people to review things but not have anybody else comment on those reviews, where you can enable or disable that based upon your particular preference. I'm going to leave the allow comments option. Now we see new review comments need approval. So I would generally say that if you're having problems and you're having spam, then you might want to enable the comment approval before anybody can do anything on there. Okay, so we're going to leave those options as they are. If we open up the post metadata, you can see there's some extra options. So average rating metadata key, there's the key you might want to use. And then we've got the post metadata ratio bound. In other words, do you want to use like 1 to 5 stars, 1 to 10 stars, those kinds of things. It's up to you. So I'm just going to enable that, leave everything as it is for now. And we're simply going to make sure that this is all saved out and we're all good to go. Next up, we've got integrations if you want to use this. Now, if you have a lot of junk coming through, then I would recommend enabling the reCAPTCHA, and then you can just input your site key and secret key, and that'll just basically help you cut down all of that junk. For this example, because it's a demo site, I'm just going to disable that option. Okay, so we've done the first things that we need to do. We've installed it, we've done the basic configuration, we're pretty much good to go. Now things are set up, let's add our rating and comments feature to the single recipe post template. So let's open our single recipe template and we can then add in what we need to. So let's edit this with Elementor. And once we're inside there, we can now start configuring how this looks and how we want everything to work. So we're going to scroll down to the bottom and we're going to use the option now to drop in our review section. Let's do a search for reviews. So we're just going to do a search and we want to grab the right option. This example is the reviews listing, so we're going to drag and drop that underneath our design. Now, if it doesn't go inside there, don't worry, you can just use the navigator on the right-hand side, but that's okay, it's all working okay. So, we've got that basically inserted in there. Let's just tidy this up a little bit. Let's add a little bit of margin at the top and bottom. So let's just put something like 30 pixels top and bottom, and we'll put 30 pixels of padding around there, and we'll also put a background color in. So we're just going to come into our background section and we're going to set that to be a very, very pale grey. So just so we get some separation, that'll do. That looks pretty good. Okay, so we've set up our review section, but now we need to configure it to work with Jet. So what we need to do, we're going to set the star rating for the rating layout. That's perfectly fine. The rating input type, we're going to set that to be stars as well. So we won't see it at the moment, but it just allows you to pick stars. Then we're going to just put in the review rating type. You've got average and you've got details. Now the average is going to give you an average overview of all of the combined ratings, or you could just use the details and that'll give you individual details. It's up to you how you want to use that option. Now, if you want to tweak any of the icons, you can tweak those inside here. It's entirely up to you. And if you want to change any of the labels, you can also do that here as well. But that's basically it. This is just there to allow us to show and input the reviews and things. So let's just update that. And let's just hop back over to the site. And let's go and take a look at one of our recipes. And if we scroll down to the bottom, we should now see there's our no reviews found, and we can write a review. So we click on write a review. You can see we can put our review in, our title, and the rating we want to give it. Now obviously you can customize the look and color of all these, the fonts, the typography, to make sure everything is totally in keeping with the style of your site. I'm not going to go into that level of detail because we've already covered in the previous videos how to set up your style, and we've created global theme styles. You can just apply those when necessary. Finally, let's take a look at adding the star rating to our listing template to show off just how good our recipes are. Okay, so what we need to do now is just open up that listing item, and there's our recipe listing. We're going to edit this with Elementor, and we're just going to grab our star rating and drop that inside here. So let's just do a search for star rating. There's our star rating. We're going to drag and drop that into our design. Now you can position this where you want to, obviously. We select that, And now we can just change a few things. At the moment, the scale is from 0 to 5, which is perfectly fine. The rating you can see is set to 5, but we want to use the dynamic tags option to dynamically link and pull the data that we've created as part of JetReviews. So we're going to choose that option. I'm going to come down and choose the average rating option from there. Once you do that, that now sets it to be the average rating, and we can click on the little wrench icon and we can just set that up to make sure that everything is configured the way that we want. Now at the moment this is set to percentage, but we need to change this to ratio. You can see the ratio bound 5, in other words it's from 1 to 5, and the decimal count is 1 in this example, although that's not that important right now. And you can basically leave it at that. You can change the icons if you want to. You can set up anything else you want inside here. So you can choose the unmarked style. You can see you can have it as a solid fill or an outline. Whatever you want to do, it's entirely up to you. We're going to update that. And I'm just going to quickly apply a little bit of spacing around this. So we're going to come back in and we're just going to add in some margins to the left and right. So I'm going to set this to 20 left, 20 right. And you can see that now positions it as we want. Now also you can lay this out. You can put it side by side. You could lift this up and put it underneath the recipe, above the recipe title, whatever you want to do. Get creative with it. Now before I wrap this bit up, I'm going to copy this. So you're just going to duplicate this, going to copy it. Going to update this template, and because we've got pretty much an identical template on the remove from favorites template listing, we're going to do the same thing in this. We're going to edit, exit to our dashboard, go back into JetEngine, back into our listing items, and we're going to grab remove from favorites, edit that with Elementor, and we're simply going to add this in there just for consistency. We're going to just paste that inside there. We might need to position it where we want, drop that inside there, and we'll hit update. And that's that added in there as well. So now we've got our star rating applied to all of our listings. All that's left for us to do now is just test this out. So let's go and take a look at our healthy vegan recipes, and let's just scroll down and let's write a review. That looks tasty. And we'll say we're going to give that 4 out of 5 stars. So we'll just submit our review, and you can see there's our review added to there. So now if we go back to our home section, we should now find we've got a 4 out of 5 star Hawaiian pizza. So that's pretty cool. I like the look of that. If we pop into our, well, let's actually add this to our favorites a second. And we pop into our favorites, we can see there's our 4 out of 5 stars all set up inside there. If we come over to the dashboard of our WordPress website into the JetReviews section, you can see we've got an overview of all of the different JetReviews. So how many reviews, how many have been approved, not approved, comments, and so on and so forth. And you can see we can just choose and break this down by the post type. So recipe being the only one we've actually got active. And that's it. That's how easy it is to add dynamic ratings and comments and things onto your recipe listing website. We've covered a heck of a lot of really useful skills in this mini series, and if you've enjoyed this and would like to see more like it, well, be sure to let me know below, and don't forget to like and share this video. As always, all of the applicable links are in the description below. My name is Paul C, this is WPTuts, and until next time, take care.